The parts you need when you need them. Once we understand what we have in our facility, we need to make sure that we have adequate spares, we have all the backups. If we kind of go back to our manufacturing challenges. So when a part fails, are we sure we have a replacement? Are we sure that replacement is going to work? And does our supplier have it if we don't have it? We didn't cover this earlier, but not only are we going to collect information about what we have on site, we're actually going to go through the storeroom as well. So going through the storeroom is going to give us visibility into the condition of the products, how many we have. If we have, for example, if I know I have 3 of those 1769 SDN modules, it's recommended that I have 1. I have 0. And that means that any one of those can break, and that may cause an extended downtime. Same thing with the other products we were looking at earlier. So if I've got 8 of these in the plant and no spares and they're discontinued, it's just adding additional challenges that we have to plan for. So this is just going to create some planning for us. If I go back to my equipment again, this is also included in my equipment. So under the storeroom area, we're going to actually have the active and insufficient spares list. So you can see in this example, there was a lot of room for improvement on the insufficient spares. They've also got it broken down by area. So we can see within the processing area here, there are 205 parts that are discontinued and don't have a spare. So these are highly risky environments. When we look at this here, we can see whether we have spares or not and break it down dynamically live. So this is included with the My Equipment reporting. So once we understand, okay, we don't have spares for some of the parts we need. We know we want to get spares, but what's our best way of doing it? So the traditional route is just understanding the spares we need and buying the parts. And that does make sense in some cases. Another thing we want to look at though is what if we could have what we needed on site, sitting in the plant itself, in the storeroom, without the full upfront cost. So without buying all the parts up front, what if we could still have them sitting on site? And what if that warranty didn't start until the part was in use? So instead of buying the part, the warranty is going to start, the clock's going to start. We don't use it for 5 years. We go to use it. The warranty's already expired before we've even put the part into production. And the traditional model, certainly once you've paid for them, they're yours. The nice thing about that, there's no additional cost, but if you never use them, it's a good thing. You didn't have to use a spare, but you've paid for the part. So what if you could actually return the part that you didn't use or you no longer needed? There's an option here called a parts management agreement. So what this does is we can actually take Rockwell and third-party parts into a single agreement. Instead of upfront purchases, we can actually do a lower cost where the parts are sitting on your shelf. So there's a lower cost fee associated, but they're sitting on site, and you only, quote, purchase them when you cut them open and use them. So they're not yours until you take them out and you need to use them. And we typically use a remanufactured part for this, which is going to give you even a lower cost once you do decide to purchase them. The warranty doesn't start until the part is in use. So it can sit on your shelf for years, but as soon as you put it into service, that's when the warranty starts. And then finally, as you change your products throughout the parts management agreement, if you're not using one, if you had a line that had a lot of critical components on it that you had sitting in your PMA, but then you sold the line or the line was decommissioned, you can actually move those parts outside of the PMA. And then at that point, you never had to pay for the spares. You're just paying that, low annual or monthly, quarterly fee, and you don't have to buy the parts that then are sunk cost once the line is sold. Additionally, VMI itself, vendor managed inventory, is not a new concept, but what we do have is a next generation of it. So moving on to vendor managed inventory, which is where ES&E can help manage the inventory within your storeroom. Instead of just putting a recommended round number of, let's say, for example, 10 parts into a shelf and say, let's go with 10, and whenever it drops below 5, let's order more until we get to 10 again. It's a very common way of doing vendor managed inventory based on just nice, clean, round numbers. We'll assume it's going to go use this much, and nobody really goes back and checks, is that really how many we use? Do we need to have 10 sitting here? Maybe we have 100 sitting on our shelf, but the supplier has 200 already in their stock. So are we optimizing what we have? So with our latest VMI offering, what we actually are going to track is how much you're actually using the part. Are you using this constantly? Is Is it turning over all the time? Are we taking some off the shelf? Are we putting new ones back on? Are we taking them off, putting them back on? Or is it rarely used? If it's rarely used, we're not going to have to keep as many with us all the time. We're also going to look at your inventory and our ES&E inventory. And that way, if we know we have this part, we use it all the time, we have a lot of customers that use it, you don't actually have to keep as many. You don't have to pay for as many sitting on site because we have them. So if you use them and you use one and we can have one to you the next day and you've got a buffer, we don't need to have 10, 20, 30 sitting on your shelf because we as ES&E have them as well. And that's actually going to automatically adjust the minimum and maximums recommended within the storeroom. Additionally, managing a storeroom can typically be a pretty complicated process. Somebody takes something, or even the VMI side, somebody comes and they check regularly, okay, they use one of these, I need to replace it, or even somebody going in the storeroom and grabbing a part. Well, what project was that for? Or what line was it used? What cost do I associate with that? Within this VMI software, what we're actually going to do is there's a few ways to automate this process as much as possible. That could be relatively simple functions like taking a part and then pushing a button to automatically generate a request for a quote. There are RFID tags that can be used within the process to, when somebody walks out of the storeroom with a part, it can actually track it automatically. Or another example, we can even do something like a locker, where somebody has to go in, they have to request a part, they have to say what project is going to go to, maybe a group code to charge it to, and then the bin's going to open and somebody's going to take one. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually automate the process of managing our inventory and where it's going to go.